Welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. We continue with our discussion regarding the 2013-2014 crime stats. They were released last Friday. Some highlights on some achievements, but also some points of concern. We're speaking now to the Minister, Mr. Nkosinathi Nhleko, his Deputy Makhotso Sotyu, as well as the Police Commissioner General Riah Phiyega. Commissioner, let's pick up with you. Just before the break, we had spoken about an apparent breakdown in the relationship between community members and members of the police. And it all centers around the image of police. Many people on Twitter, I'm going to read just one, Kwazi saying, investigating officers are extremely incompetent. Twice my house was burgled in Pretoria. Twice the dockets were closed, citing a lack of evidence. Even station commander promised to help. To this day, he has not. It's 3 years back. People are bringing up issues of Marikana. People are bringing up issues of the Mido Masia incident, Oscar Pistorius case, and where police inadequacies were brought to the fore. There seems to be a perception that police are not in control when it comes to the situation of crime in South Africa. What's your take?
Police are in control. And this is why we arrested 1.7 million people last year alone. And I want to say it wouldn't have been possible if the police were not in control. Of course, as you mentioned, there are areas that are being indicated there in the Twitter and have been highlighted in the newspapers, like the Mido Masia. Policing is a very highly controlled environment with very clear standing orders on how to do things. Each and every policeman is trained on how to arrest. And if they make mistakes, mistakes are flagged by the media. But when we correct, judge us on what we do when our police do wrong things. Because even in that area, we disciplined and we fired people. And it's not only in that one. You go to the Siyabusa matter, we did the same. Public order police, and you go to Mututlung, we intervened. Because out of the 11,000 public order protests that we managed last year, you haven't had each one of them, going wrong. And when it goes wrong, we do intervene, because we would like our police to follow our protocols and our SOP. And when you're a police, you need to be knowing that, because you need to have your wits. You must be able to decide at the instant, and therefore your knowledge and your practice for that becomes very important. However, I want to raise something else here. We should make sure that as a society, we don't make it impossible for the police to do their work, because there is just undue criticism at times which intimidates the police to be able to do their work. And we don't want to be in that space, because we want an efficient, a safe, and a secure country. And remember that whilst our remedy is given, if you go to the chapter 10 of the Constitution, it also tells us how to conduct our work. There are values in how we have to offer our public services as government. So police are equally also bound by that. Ubuntu practices, respecting the human rights of citizens of this country, that's the journey we're taking to get professionalized. So I want to assure you, we are very much on top of our issues. And I want to also say to you, you would not have companies coming out there from the world to come and say, we want to put 30 billion in South Africa to buy Absa Bank. It's because they know that there is stability in this country. There is a chance for them to be able to operate there. Marriott Hotel comes here and say, I want to buy all the Protea hotels. They would not waste those billions to come into this country if they were not knowing that we have a good, safe, and secure country where the law enforcement agencies are doing their work.
Thank you so much for that. Commissioner, I'm going to now call upon the audience to also participate. And remember, you at home can also get in touch with us. Morning Live at SABC is our Twitter handle. The hashtag is the TNA Biz Brief. That's how you can pose some of your questions. We're going to first go to table number 9. His Majesty King Tibi Molefe is with us. And we were just speaking a bit earlier about the importance of public-private partnerships and involving community members in this battle against crime. The King will be addressing us and asking us a particular question. If we can get a microphone to him as soon as possible. I know I had said that we were going to start at table number 11, but I think this is a very poignant point that we can make.
In combating crime and the effects of crime, should we not be looking at a greater and more formal role for leadership, traditional structures, and cultural values, as we have always had in the past, our own structures, and now we are using a foreign jurisprudence which might not necessarily relate to the African realities as we have known them and experienced them? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of King Molefe.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to make note of that. The gentleman there speaking on behalf of the King. Relevant stakeholders and their role and participation in combating crime. It's key, isn't it, Minister?
No, it is certainly so. It is one of the key questions. Even the National Development Plan basically does talk to that particular matter, and I think it's a point that relates to the issue that we had raised earlier on, and that's the question of police-community relations. And I think that point is quite an interesting one, because also informally, maybe I can also share this informally amongst some of us, we've been raising this question. Shouldn't we start looking in the direction of what structures exist at a societal level, at a community level, and how do we use them, and how do they participate effectively in the fight against crime and corruption in our society? So I think that's quite a valid point. It would also be quite an interesting area of work that needs to be taken further. The second additional point just I want to throw in, there are these incidences that have been spoken about. I think you spoke about the Media Marcia, Marikana. There's also Mr. Pistorius' case. Now, firstly, I think we should have a balanced criticism of the police. You have tens of thousands who have a contingent of about 194,000, for an example. So out of that number, you have tens of thousands of people who are extremely committed to policing work. And therefore, it can't be that because of the actions of the few, therefore the tens of thousands kind of constructive and positive work in society is probably completely lost and misconstrued and so forth. I think secondly is that we should also appreciate that regardless of these negative developments, we now have got a South African Police Service that is accountable. In the Media Marcia case, within a year, investigated, charged, and of course, people were then fired and so forth. And this is a complete sort of new culture in the South African Police Service as opposed to what used to be the case pre-1994. For instance, we can count a litany of cases around that. The same question also applies to the Marikana question. It's a tragedy that occurred, that happened, but we should also respect the fact that the Commission is doing work around that area, and we shouldn't run into foregone kind of conclusions about the manner of happenings and things that occurred there. But also the interesting part is that we are being held accountable. And that's why we are then subjected to scrutiny through the Commission's work. And what the South African Police Service can only learn, and in fact, and social leadership in the country can only learn out of the Commission's findings and or recommendations, for an example, in terms of how we need to deal with such matters into the future. Now, the Pistorius case, unless somebody takes me through chapter and verse in the judgment that says we have the kind of judgment as we have it today, precisely because of how investigation was conducted by the police. Now, I don't remember that.
But the police were found wanting when it comes to that. The crime scene had been said to have been tampered with, whether purposefully or accidentally, whether it was an act of negligence. It was found that it was found wanting, or the police service was found wanting.
I agree that that point was made at one point or another during the course of the trial. But I think we should also accept the fact that the South African police at the time also rectified that particular matter and dealt with it.
Okay. General Phiyega, let me bring you into this particular equation now. You did mention, and rightfully so, that the majority of police officers are doing sterling work, hard work under very, very difficult circumstances, but that unfortunately the bad apples, if I can call them that, are the ones that get the notoriety and the attention. But perhaps it's because the incidents, the magnitude thereof, and not necessarily the quantity, but the severity of the action is one that leaves South Africans gasping. Mira Masia is the one that we have mentioned, but unfortunately it's not an isolated case. There are a number of police officers, as we speak at the moment, that have been arrested, that are facing trial for various misdemeanors. And unfortunately, some South Africans would be of the view that police officers are perpetrators in far too often cases, and not the ones who are supposed to be shielding or protecting them. Is that a cause for concern for the department? Are you actively looking at uprooting such people or criminal elements within the police? Are you increasing the benchmark of the caliber of police officers who can be practicing, so that it's not just any Tom, Dick and Harry who can just be in the service?
Absolutely, Ayanda. Let me say to you that crime is our business. And it doesn't matter where crime is. If it's within the police, without the police, we will arrest the criminal. So there isn't any pussyfooting around whether we have to arrest our own. When we announced the results last week, we indicated that in the ensuing period that we are announcing the statistics for, we had arrested 720 police, because crime is our business. And as I say, it doesn't matter where it lies, we will do something else. And as the minister has indicated, indeed we intervene. And remember, we also have an oversight entity in the ministry, IPID. IPID investigates all the transgressions of the police, particularly where citizens are involved. And we account, when they give us their reports, we must be able to go back to them to say, we've looked into the matter, these are the disciplinary actions that we have taken, and where they are unsatisfied with the level of disciplinary action that we've taken, they engage us. So there is a lot of there are a lot of checks and balances in terms of how we're dealing with this matter. I must also indicate that, remember, the powers that the police have are huge. And this is why society is also vigilant. And it is indeed right for the society to be active in their criticism of the police, because it is necessary for us to keep on being on our guard, to say, we're serving people, we should serve them with care, we should ensure that their rights are protected and all those type of issues. But I just want to say to you, indeed, as the police, we do a lot to actually deal with our own.
Okay, let's go back to the floor now and just get some questions. Table 11, I think it's Darlene James, who's been at the forefront of the crime against drug abuse in various societies. If we can get the microphone to table number 11, please. She's got some concerns with regard to police officers that may have been bought by the drug lords. Darlene, you can ask the question, please.
Yes, good morning, Ayanda. Good morning to our Minister, Deputy Minister and Commissioner. We have raised these concerns in Eldorado Park previously. We are asking what is being done about repeated offenders. These drug lords are being arrested over and over again, and 2 days later they're back on the streets. We understand that it's their constitutional right to get granted bail, but you have the same guys going into the cells, and that is why obviously we have such high arrests, but we don't have any convictions. The same guys getting arrested and the same guys back out in our community. What is being done about that? Also, with regards to the cops in our communities, cops become so complacent and sort of so relaxed with the community because they know the ins and outs of the community. What are the chances of us actually getting our cops in our communities, to various other, to rotate them so that they don't become complacent? Too many of our criminals in our communities work with some of the cops. So why can't we rotate these cops? I mean, for a long time, the community has been complaining, saying that the cops are working with the drug dealers. Are they being investigated? What sort of feedback is coming to our community? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to add on to that question, the issue also in the mother city, in Cape Town, is a problem when it comes to the Cape Flats and the drug issue there. And it seems as if police officers are losing the battle there. Just a newspaper article this morning saying that drug lords are hiring children younger and younger. They're also being involved in gang-related activity. It seems that the police needs reinforcement there. So could we answer Darlene's question and also speak to the phenomenon in the Western Cape? Police Commissioner, you can take that question, please.
Let me start off by saying, you know, this social activism is very important, and we appreciate that. Because indeed, we are of the belief that somebody, somewhere, somehow, knows something about crime. And we encourage other people to talk to us. So this type of initiatives, such as in El Dorado Park, are very, very important. And we appreciate that because her activism has assisted us a lot to do other things. First, let me embrace the suggestion she's giving in terms of complacency. And indeed, if communities know about police who are doing other things with other syndicates that are, we would like to know that, because we will not let that unattended. I can assure you as the National Commissioner that together with the leadership team that I'm having, we'll look into that. And I'm sure General Mutiba in Gauteng would be very much willing to engage much more closely. I know you've been engaging with some of the officials within the police, and all the messages that you're sending us and your concerns are being taken care of. I do want to say, indeed, the whole issue that you're raising in terms of drug lords, a lot of the people that we are arresting are more the people who are selling. We would want to know who are selling these drugs, who are distributing these drugs. They are our neighbors, they are our sisters, they are our sons. Come forward as a community. Tell us, because they don't just, those drugs don't just drop in the hands of those children to go and be sold in schools. It is something that we need to jointly fight with. We are not going to a Mexico as a nation. But if we decide we are not going there, we need to work together. Because we know who are the people who are producing these drugs. It is in our farms, it is in our homes, it is in our backyards. We can see people who are looking who are leading lifestyles that do not, resonate with what they are doing. But let us know.
Perhaps it's easier said than done. On this platform, Darlene can get comment from yourselves and the minister and the deputy minister. But if I'm at home somewhere alone and I know of something, and I also assume that the police are in the pockets of these drug lords and of these gang leaders, it's literally putting my life on the line. If I go there, they will threaten me with my children, they will threaten me with my relatives. If you say anything to the police, it will be a problem. What sort of avenues or channels are open to people who are not here today in this platform?
I think the police, my problem is when we have a problem with a certain police, and then we say that the police are like this and that, especially with regard to the issues of police being part of the drug laws and you name it. It's not every police who's like that. There are those few police. Hence, it's very important, as the commissioner has said, that if you know of a certain police officer who is doing that, there are many channels. For instance, if you can't go to the police themselves, we heard there about the IPID, that is the police, Independent Police Investigation Directorate, which are the people, I'm sure that they won't be bought into doing such things. Even ourselves as the ministry, our doors are open. I think what we need to do, there is an anonymous number, if I remember very well, that people can report such crimes without giving your name. But if you know the person involved, the police here, and then say that so that we can attend to that. Also on the issue that was raised about the police to rotate from one area to another area, I'm sure that also depends to that specific community. Because Ayanda, as I'm talking to you now, I've visited so many provinces and communities with my community outreach programs, where people say that we don't, for instance, I'll take the Free State, where they will say that we want our own here in the Free State. And then you go to the Eastern Cape, they say we want our own here. Then we decided then as a ministry that when we start with our recruitment, that is from the past 2 years, we embarked on something that we called community-based recruitment. That is, if we recruit into the police for a certain area, for a certain province, we recruit within that area so that these children can go back and service that community. So that if something goes wrong with that individual, then it's the responsibility of that community, because they are the ones who said to us, this is the right people that we want to see as police officers here. Maybe the rotation will mean maybe from one area to another area, but in the same province. But not getting people from the Free State to the Eastern Cape and from one area to one province in a certain area, which is a little bit problematic at present.
Minister, I know you want to add to those particular points, but I'm going to ask that we take the question on table 13, that you'll answer that question and also bring forth some of your thoughts on the past one or two topics that we've just discussed now. So if we can get the question on table number 13, I believe it's Jean-Pierre Lukamba from the African Diaspora Forum.
Thanks a lot, Ayanda. Bonjour, Minister.
Bonjour.
I would like to, in the name of all African migrants in South Africa, to thank the work you are doing in making sure that all migrants in South Africa, they are less victims in the end of the police, especially the National Commissioner and the General Paras, the Ilpro class commander. My first question will be, very soon we'll be opening Yuva police station. Are you planning to establish as a pilot project the translation service? Because most of our people are complaining that they can't go to the police to report if they can't speak Zulu or English or any South African language. The second one is we're receiving also the report that, especially on Friday, the police are arresting migrants for home affairs permit or papers. They are keeping them in the police custody. On Monday, they can just find that their paper is genuine and they can just say, we are sorry, they can be released. Also that the police are stopping also people. If they notice that those people are migrants, they are asking them driver's license. Myself, I was victim twice of police asking me my driver's license. I don't know if that's to be arresting migrants for papers and to arresting migrants for driver's license is the work of police or is the work of traffic department and the immigration officer. Thank you.
Minister?
No, okay. No, thank you very much. Firstly, maybe just with regards to the last question, it must be remembered that our mandate is the South African Police Service is to enforce the law and uphold the law. Now, so when you ask for a driver's license, you must produce it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you ask for papers, produce your papers. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because that also is within the framework of our laws as the country.
If I may interject
now,
there, do excuse my ignorance. Migrants in South Africa to carry their papers with them everywhere they go 24/7?
What is it?
Is that the case?
Yes.
That is the case, that wherever they are, they are to carry their permits, so they either work permits or their visas, etc., to be in the country, and therefore they can be asked at random, whenever, wherever.
Yes. I mean, you have a duty to identify yourself as and when you are required to do so. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Please do continue.
So that's the one point. Now, there's an important point that was raised by Ms. Darrell, recidivism. Basically, you repeated the offenders. Now, and I think that's a point that it's not the first time that I hear of it here. It's a point that has been raised almost all over across the country. And it's a point that we have also identified ourselves as the South African Police Service that we will need, as part of making a contribution to strengthen the criminal justice system in the country. It's a point that we will want to take forward as well for further engagement and discussion with our sister sort of departments in the criminal justice sector, for an example. Because indeed, it is so. But what is also worrying is that the reason why you're also raising it here is because also in your mind, just like the general members of the public, they think it's the police that are releasing the suspects back onto society. And I think somewhat the point, the linkage is obscured somewhat to understand that yes, we arrest, but we also have got to refer our work to duly constituted courts of law in our country, who then process and then determine the issue of whether or not you are granted bail or not granted bail. Now, but indeed, the issue that needs to be taken forward is the question that says, are our bail conditions tight enough? And I think that's your point. Should we, because your major bail condition, for instance, for consideration at this stage is about whether or not we are a flight risk. Should we not look at other factors also that must inform the whole question of whether or not you are granted bail and so on? So I think it's quite a valid point, and all we can say is that it's the work that we need to take forward to the criminal justice sector.
If I may just also go back to Jean-Pierre's question, he asked about the translators at police stations, especially in areas where we know that there's a number of people from various nations. Yeovil, I think it was the particular one that he spoke about, but we could also perhaps say Windsor and other areas of Johannesburg. That's the one that I know of, but various areas in the country where we know that there'll be a mix of people, perhaps who are French-speaking, who are Portuguese-speaking. That speaks to local government level or the grassroots level. Are there plans in place to make sure that there are translators so people can come and report crimes?
I think it's important for us to ensure that we're able to communicate with people. Indeed, we will look into that matter because it's important for us to be able to collect information. One of the things we're starting to talk about, for instance, with our Human Resources Development Department is mother tongue statement taking, so that we can be able to enable the police and others to be able to report in their mother tongue. We record, we question, but we're able to translate it. So it's one of the modules that we're currently working on. So the issue that is being raised by the diaspora representative is also important, so that we're able to communicate, we're able to allow whoever is reporting, that comfort of being able to report freely, yeah. And maybe just to say, Ayanda, when you talk about the arrests and all that, jails are full. Jails are full. And this is why you would hear about parole and those type of things. And jails are full because police are arresting, courts are convicting, and people are in jail. Let's maybe pick up on that. Minister, you touched on the misconception that, when people are granted jail, it's all because of the police. There's often a misunderstanding of the fine lines between the various stakeholders in the security cluster, the NPA, the police, and various other departments. But there is a correlation, isn't there? There is a ripple effect. There is a connection between them all. And where I'm going to is a comment from the Institute of Security Studies, having pinned the increasing number of contact crimes on a failing crime intelligence unit in the South African Police Service. Also just speaking to the whole debacle, if I can call it that, the saga with regards to intelligence that hinges on a certain Mr. Richard Mdluli, and how that perhaps gives the impression that, crime carries on unabated, that organized crime is not convicted, because these are not crimes where people are going into shops and stealing because they're hungry. These are organized crime units. These are people with guns in their hands. Where do they get the ammunition? It speaks to the global, the wider security cluster. Talk to us about perhaps the domino effect that the scandal in that sector has made or contributed to the crime stats.
No, I think we need to isolate two issues. We need to isolate specific cases as they relate to specific individuals, away from institutional work, for an example, or area of operation. I think we should try and do that. Because the danger with a question of this nature, for instance, is that that's when you begin to do what do you call it in English? I don't know. But you're beginning to subject the work of the institution to the existence of one particular human individual. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the danger in that. And by so saying, I'm not saying these issues should not be addressed. They need to be addressed. Of course, we need to deal with them. But also, I think statistics would also show, in terms of operational work, that some of the successes that we have registered is actually precisely because of the work that crime intelligence has been able to do. How do you close down, for an example, a drug laboratory without intelligence? You know, how do you foil an attempted bank robbery in Klerksdorp and discover AK-47s and the would-be sort of getaway car without intelligence and so on? So I'm saying the point is not totally correct. Where it has relevance is that indeed, even if we're making, as we are making this kind of a progress and headway insofar as picking up intelligence and of course acting on it and processing, and as well as subsequently sort of arrest, we need to intensify our efforts. That we agree with that point. But to suggest that there are failings precisely because there are individual cases that have not been dealt with pertaining to certain individuals, and therefore you have some degree of institutional instability that renders that institution ineffective and so forth. We certainly don't agree with that kind of approach, because then work and evidence is producing itself otherwise.
We'll have to leave that there for now, because I do know that it's an ongoing story and there are some developments there. It's very difficult to make a concise and conclusive finding. But something that I would like to discuss when we come back from the break is the evolution of crime. We're seeing a phenomenon, cybercrime. We're seeing technology come to the fore. And my question is whether or not police officers are equipped and skilled to handle that. Just a recent case and mentioned the robberies in various Gauteng stores, the iStore, I think it was MTN as well. A number of cell phone shops have been robbed. When police were approached and asked whether or not these cell phone devices had the relevant software to be able to track them, it was found that they obviously were not activated because these are brand new. But many of the police officers were even shocked to know that there is such software, if my sources are correct. So we'll speak to you about the evolution of crime and whether or not police officers are keeping up with the times. A quick ad break, more on that when we return. Stay right where you are.